The story starts in a small town in Michigan where David Rice, a typical teenager, lives with his harsh father Will. David's mother left when he was 5, leading to a strained relationship between him and his dad. School serves as a refuge for David from his troubled home life. He doesn't have many friends but secretly likes a classmate named Millie Harris. One day he gives her a snow globe featuring a tiny Eiffel Tower. Millie, who dreams of traveling the world, is thrilled with the gift. However, their sweet moment is disrupted by Mark, the school bully, who mocks David and tosses the snow globe into the frozen Huron River. Determined to get it back, David steps onto the ice despite Millie's warnings. As he retrieves the globe, the ice cracks beneath him and he falls into the icy water, getting swept away. He struggles to surface but suddenly finds himself in a nearby public library. Confused and cold, David decides to brush off the strange event and heads home. There, his father immediately starts yelling at him for being late. Not wanting to argue, David rushes to his room and locks the door, hiding in a corner. Soon a furious Will starts banging on the door. Just as he's about to break in, David vanishes again and reappears in the library. At this point, he starts to realize he may have a unique power of teleportation. He decides to test this idea by focusing hard, and to his surprise, he reappears in his room just minutes after he had disappeared. David realizes this is his best opportunity to escape his abusive father. He takes his savings and runs away to start anew. Before leaving, he stops at Millie's house to leave a snow globe, letting her know he is safe. He then heads to the city, rents a shabby motel room, and begins to practice his powers. At first, he crashes into a tree in a nearby park, but soon he learns to focus on images of the places he wants to visit. His first destination is the Empire State Building, where he cherishes memories of his mother Mary. As weeks go by, David feels ready to fully utilize his abilities. He understands that he can only teleport to places he can visualize. He sneaks a look at a bank vault while pretending to use the restroom. That night, he teleports inside the vault and steals bags of cash. The next morning, the bank discovers the theft and the police are called in. Soon after, a mysterious man named Roland arrives, claiming he will investigate for the National Security Agency. He has dealt with similar cases and knows about jumpers, people who can teleport. He suspects that one of them is responsible for the robbery. Fast forward 8 years and David is living a luxurious life. He has a fancy penthouse in New York filled with expensive items. Now an adult, he has excellent control over his powers, with walls adorned with pictures of landmarks that help him teleport anywhere in the world. One evening, he teleports to a pub in London, feeling so at ease that he uses his ability for simple pleasures. In the pub, he quickly disappears to approach a lovely girl sitting alone at the bar. Another jumper, Griffin O'Connor, notices his reckless behavior, but David is completely unaware and casually leaves with the girl. Meanwhile, Roland has trapped a jumper in the tropical forests of Brazil. The young boy attempts to vanish but gets ensnared in a net of wires that shocks him and prevents him from teleporting again. It becomes clear that Roland is a paladin, part of a group of religious extremists who historically pursue jumpers, believing those with superpowers are abominations. Without hesitation, Roland kills the boy and shortly after receives a call about a new lead in a bank robbery case. The scene shifts back to New York, where David returns to his apartment and is surprised to find Roland there, unaware of his identity. The teenager tries to force him out, but Roland retaliates by striking him with a special baton that delivers 1000 volts of electricity, limiting David's ability to teleport more than a few feet within the apartment. A struggle ensues, and after a tough fight, David manages to teleport into a hidden room within his wall. David takes a bag of cash from the room and disappears. However, the skilled paladin is determined to find him, so he sends his men to all of David's usual hiding spots. He also discovers an old photo of Millie in a cabinet, which sparks a clever idea. Meanwhile, David finds himself back in his old room in Michigan. After an awkward reunion with his dad, he heads to Millie's house. Her mother tells him that Millie works at a nearby bar. David goes there but feels nervous when he sees his childhood crush. Tries to sneak out unnoticed but runs into a grown-up Mark, who immediately recognizes him and starts asking questions. Millie overhears and joins them, revealing she saw David arrive and was hoping he would speak to her. This makes Mark jealous and he tries to flirt with her, but David punches him first. A fight breaks out and they both get teleported away while no one is watching. They end up in the bank vault that David robbed years ago. David threatens Mark before jumping away, leaving him locked in the vault as punishment. After that, David returns to the bar and finally talks to Millie. She shares that she gave up her travel dreams to face the reality of working. David lies, saying he's a banker and makes a lot of money. He invites her to Rome and she happily agrees. Unbeknownst to them, Griffin has been tracking David and overhears their conversation. Meanwhile, Mark gets arrested by the police on robbery charges. Soon, Roland shows up at the police station, pretending to be a CIA agent. He questions Mark and claims he believes his wild story. Mark then explains everything about David and his crush, Millie. Roland realizes that the girl he just heard about is the same one from the photo he found in David's cabinet. He instructs his men to track her down and soon learns she has gone to Rome, so he sends his team after her. 10 hours later, David and Millie arrive in Rome and check into a luxurious hotel. They later step outside to take in the city's beauty. In the next scene, they explore the Colosseum, where David attempts to access the lower level, Unexpectedly, he runs into Griffin. Shocked, David tries to leave, but Griffin suddenly appears in front of him. He reveals that there are other jumpers like them all over the world. Griffin scolds David for jumping carelessly, warning him that he has attracted the wrong attention. Meanwhile, a group of paladins enters the Colosseum and starts chasing them. David is hit with a baton and left stunned. However, Griffin, more experienced, teleports away quickly and takes out the paladins one by one. Once the immediate threat is gone, he helps David regain his composure and explains the paladin organization that hunts jumpers like them before vanishing again. Suddenly, a Colosseum employee arrives and sees the unconscious bodies, screaming for help. David quickly jumps into the teleportation car left by Griffin and finds himself in a secret hideout in the Egyptian desert. Griffin is furious to see him and reminds him that he left Millie alone. Realizing his mistake, David rushes back to the Colosseum, but the police are already there and arrest both of them. 8 hours later, the Italian authorities are still trying to interrogate David. They cannot make an official arrest until the magistrate from the US embassy arrives. To David's shock, when the magistrate finally appears, it is his mother, Mary. Before he can understand what is happening, she removes his handcuffs and tells him to escape. She warns him that more paladins are coming. Confused, David tries to follow her, but a police officer blocks his path. He then teleports to the waiting room and tells Millie that he was released after a thorough investigation. She doubts it could be that simple, but David urges her to trust him and takes her to the airport. Once there, Millie demands to know why they are running if everything is supposedly fine. David offers no explanation and simply states that they cannot be together anymore. Feeling betrayed, she boards the plane and departs for Michigan alone. Shortly after, David arrives at Griffin's hideout and discovers that Griffin is hunting paladins to kill them. Griffin explains that these wicked men are after their kain and will harm their loved ones if they cannot capture a jumper. Hearing this, David worries about his difficult father who is home alone. However, he feels reassured that Millie is safe for now, as she is on a long flight. In the next scene, David teleports to his old home, only to find his father dead on the floor. It turns out Roland had already visited him. This shatters David, and he finally understands that his reckless actions have led to devastating consequences. David has no time to grieve. He needs to find Roland before Millie arrives in the US. Filled with anger, he teleports back to Griffin's hideout to grab a diary that holds crucial information about paladins, including the one who killed his father. However, Griffin stops him, warning that Roland is extremely dangerous and should not be underestimated. With no other choice, David suggests they join forces to take down Roland. At first, Griffin declines, preferring to work solo, but after David persists, he finally agrees. They teleport to the Michigan airport, but they are too late. Millie has already arrived and left. This sends David into a panic, and he rushes to the bar where she used to work. He inquires about her, and a waitress mentions that a mysterious man has been searching for Millie. Realizing it must be Roland, David quickly teleports to her apartment. Fortunately, he finds her safe but struggles to explain his sudden appearance. Millie, still upset about the incident in Rome, refuses to see him. Just then, Roland and his men arrive, prompting David to swiftly take Millie to Griffin's hideout. This infuriates Griffin, who knows the paladins possess a machine that can create wormholes at the sites of jumps. Unfortunately, Roland and his crew have brought the machine and are about to use it just as Griffin feared. While they wait for the wormhole to open, David hides in a secret cave and accidentally discovers that Griffin's research includes his mother, revealing that Mary is also a paladin. Just as he turns to confront Griffin, Roland appears and captures David with electrical wires. He prepares to kill David, but Griffin intervenes, using a flamethrower to cut the wires. David forcefully pushes Roland back into the wormhole he emerged from. The fight continues in Millie's apartment in Michigan. Meanwhile, a bewildered Millie cuts the wires to free David, but she insists he must promise to leave her alone after he takes her home. David agrees but reveals that she has been his only love since childhood. As they share a romantic moment, Griffin suddenly arrives with the paladin's machine. Roland, however, uses the jump scar to launch a hook that ensnares Millie, dragging her back to the apartment just before the scar closes. After this, Griffin starts preparing a remote-controlled bomb to take to the apartment, intending to eliminate all the paladins, regardless of whether Millie is caught in the blast. Desperate to save his love, David teleports with the bomb and drops it at the Colosseum. Griffin quickly follows, and they begin to fight over the detonator, teleporting around the globe until they land on a battlefield in Chechnya. Ignoring the chaos around them, Griffin manages to grab the detonator. Just then, David leaps at him, pushing him against a pylon with a strong electric current, temporarily trapping the veteran jumper. After his victory, David teleports back to Millie's apartment, only to find her tied to the wall. He rushes in to save her, but Roland strikes him with an electric baton. The paladin then binds David above Millie, using separate electric wires for his limbs, believing the current will prevent his escape. In this tense moment, Millie apologizes for her earlier mistakes and professes her love for David. This encouragement empowers him, and suddenly the entire room vanishes from the building and is teleported to the center of the Huron River. David feels lightheaded while underwater, prompting Millie to swim to his rescue. She kisses him deeply, which allows David to transport them to the old library. Roland manages to swim through the jump scar and appears in the library as well. Moments later, David charges at him and they both disappear from sight. When the scene changes, David and Roland find themselves in a cave in the Grand Canyon. David claims he is a good person because he could have left Roland to fish sharks in the ocean. Then he vanishes, leaving the paladin alone in the isolated cave. Days later, David follows leads about his mother and finally finds her in a snowy landscape. He demands to know what is going on, and Mary reveals that she left him because she was aware of his powers. She expresses her love for David but says the only thing she can give him is a head start. Realizing his mother is aligned with the enemy, David leaves. He then reunites with Millie and they teleport to a warmer location, concluding the story.